Emily Carter never imagined her life would look like this. 5 years earlier, she had been married to Ryan Whitmore, a man whose ambition seemed limitless. Back then, they were young, deeply in love, and full of dreams. Ryan had been building a small business from scratch, often working late into the night. Emily stood beside him through every struggle, believing in him even when nobody else did. But success changed everything. As Ryan's company grew, so did the distance between them. Business meetings replaced family dinners, phone calls became shorter, arguments became more frequent. Eventually, their marriage collapsed under the weight of misunderstandings, pride, and unspoken pain. The divorce had been painful. After it ended, Emily disappeared from Ryan's world completely. She moved to another city, wanting a fresh start and a chance to rebuild her life. She never reached out to him again, and Ryan never tried to find her. Now, standing inside a crowded luxury hotel, Emily quietly wiped down tables while guests enjoyed expensive meals around her. Her feet ached after hours of work. The blue waitress uniform felt tighter than usual against her growing belly. 7 months pregnant, she was doing everything she could to support herself. Life had not been easy. The father of her unborn child had walked away when he learned about the pregnancy. Promises of forever vanished overnight, leaving Emily alone to face an uncertain future. Still, she refused to give up. She worked double shifts, saved every dollar she could, and spent her evenings preparing for the baby's arrival in a tiny apartment she rented on the edge of town. As she cleaned another table near the center of the restaurant, she felt a sharp kick from the baby. A small smile appeared on her face. "You're keeping me strong, little one," she whispered softly. At that exact moment, the hotel's main entrance opened. Several guests turned their heads. Ryan Whitmore stepped inside. Now, one of the city's most successful millionaires, Ryan carried himself with quiet confidence. Dressed in an elegant gray suit, he was attending an important business dinner at the hotel. He walked through the dining hall without paying much attention to the crowd. Then he froze. Across the room, he saw a familiar face. For a second, he thought he was mistaken, but he wasn't. It was Emily, his ex-wife, and she was heavily pregnant. Ryan stared in complete shock as countless questions raced through his mind. The woman he had once loved was standing only a few yards away, cleaning tables in a restaurant. Neither of them knew it yet, but that unexpected reunion was about to change both of their lives forever. Ryan couldn't take his eyes off Emily. For several seconds, he simply stood there trying to process what he was seeing. The elegant ballroom, the conversations around him, the clinking glasses, everything seemed to fade into the background. Emily looked different from the woman he remembered. Not older exactly, just tired. There were faint shadows beneath her eyes, and the cheerful spark she once carried seemed dimmer now. Yet there was still something familiar in the way she moved, something that instantly brought back memories Ryan thought he had buried years ago. Before he could stop himself, he began walking toward her. Emily noticed him approaching and immediately stiffened. For a moment, she considered turning away, but she knew it was too late. "Emily," Ryan said quietly. She placed the cloth on the table and met his gaze. "Hello, Ryan." The formality in her voice hurt more than he expected. They had once shared a home, dreams, and countless late-night conversations. Now they sounded like strangers. "I didn't expect to see you here," Ryan said. A faint smile crossed her face. "Neither did I." An awkward silence followed. Ryan glanced at her stomach, then quickly looked away, unsure whether it was appropriate to ask questions. "How have you been?" he finally said. Emily almost laughed at the question. How could she possibly summarize the last few years? The loneliness, the financial struggles, the disappointment, the fear of becoming a mother without support. Instead, she simply replied, "I've had better days." Something about her honesty caught Ryan off guard. For years, he had convinced himself that their divorce had been the right decision. They had argued constantly during the final months of their marriage. Both of them had been stubborn. Both had said things they regretted. But standing in front of her now, he realized how little he actually knew about what happened after they separated. A manager suddenly called Emily's name from across the room. She glanced over her shoulder. "I need to get back to work." "Wait," Ryan said. She paused. "I know this may sound strange, but could we talk after your shift?" Emily hesitated. Part of her wanted to refuse immediately. Reopening old wounds was the last thing she needed. Yet another part of her remembered the man Ryan used to be before success consumed his life. After a long moment, she nodded. "My shift ends at 9. Ryan felt an unexpected sense of relief. "Then I'll wait." As Emily returned to serving guests, neither of them noticed that the brief conversation had already stirred emotions they had spent years trying to forget. And before the night was over, truths neither of them expected would finally come to light. At exactly 9 o'clock, Emily stepped out of the hotel through the employee entrance. The evening air was cool, and after hours on her feet, she felt exhausted. All she wanted was to go home, take off her shoes, and rest. To her surprise, Ryan was still there. He was leaning against his car, waiting patiently. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ryan walked toward her. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he admitted. Emily adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder. "I almost didn't." Ryan nodded, understanding more than she realized. There was a small cafe across the street that was still open, so they decided to sit there. The atmosphere was quiet, far removed from the noise of the hotel ballroom. After ordering coffee for himself and tea for Emily, another silence settled between them. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was the silence of two people carrying years of unfinished conversations. Finally, Ryan spoke. "Why didn't you tell me where you went after the divorce?" Emily looked down at her cup. "You never asked." The answer was simple, but it hit him harder than any accusation could have. She wasn't wrong. In the months following their separation, Ryan had buried himself in work. Every new contract, every business expansion, every achievement had become a distraction from the pain he didn't want to face. "I thought you were happier without me," he said quietly. Emily gave a sad smile. "I wasn't happy, Ryan. I was just trying to survive." The honesty in her voice made his chest tighten. For the next hour, they talked more openly than they had in years. Emily told him about moving to a new city with almost no savings. She described working different jobs, struggling with rent, and rebuilding her life from scratch. She didn't complain or seek sympathy. She simply told the truth. Ryan listened carefully. The more he heard, the more he realized how little he had understood about the consequences of their divorce. When the conversation turned to the baby, his expression softened. "You seem excited about becoming a mother," he said. Emily instinctively placed a hand on her stomach. "I am." Then her eyes became emotional. "But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared." For the first time that evening, Ryan saw beyond her strength and independence. He saw someone carrying a tremendous burden alone, and something inside him shifted. The guilt he'd been avoiding for years suddenly felt impossible to ignore. As they left the cafe later that night, Ryan knew one thing with absolute certainty. He couldn't change the past. He couldn't undo the mistakes that had broken their marriage. But as he watched Emily carefully walk toward the bus stop instead of a car, he realized he no longer wanted to be a distant observer in her life. Whether she accepted it or not, he intended to help. What Ryan didn't know was that the decision he made that night would soon force both of them to confront feelings they believed had disappeared forever. The following morning, Emily was surprised to find a message from Ryan on her phone. It was short and respectful. "I hope you got home safely. Take care of yourself." Nothing more. No pressure, no demands, just concern. She stared at the message for several seconds before putting her phone away. Over the next few weeks, Ryan continued reaching out occasionally. Sometimes he would ask how she was feeling. Other times, he would simply wish her a good day. At first, Emily kept her responses brief. Years of hurt couldn't disappear overnight. She remembered the countless evenings she had spent alone during their marriage while Ryan chased success. She remembered feeling invisible, as if his business always mattered more than their relationship. Trust was not something she could rebuild in a few conversations. Yet Ryan remained patient. One afternoon, after finishing work, Emily stepped outside and noticed him waiting near the entrance. Her first reaction was surprise. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Ryan smiled awkwardly. "I brought something." He handed her a few shopping bags. Emily looked inside. There were baby clothes, diapers, blankets, and several other essentials. Her eyes widened. "Ryan, I can't accept all of this." "Why not?" "Because they're not my responsibility to ask from you." "They're not charity," he replied gently. "I just wanted to help." For a moment, Emily didn't know what to say. No one had offered to help her in months. She had become so used to handling everything alone that accepting kindness felt strange. As the weeks passed, Ryan became a regular presence in her life. He drove her to doctor's appointments when she needed transportation. He helped assemble a crib in her apartment. He even fixed small things around the house that had been broken for months. Little by little, the walls between them began to crack. One evening, while organizing baby supplies together, Emily suddenly looked at him. "Why are you doing all this?" Ryan was quiet for several seconds. Then he answered honestly, "Because losing you was the biggest mistake of my life." Emily felt her heart skip. The room fell silent. For years, she had imagined hearing those words. Now that they had finally been spoken, she wasn't sure how to react. Tears filled her eyes. Ryan moved closer but stopped giving her space. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said softly. "And I'm not asking for another chance. I just want you to know the truth." Emily looked at him for a long moment. The man standing before her wasn't the same person she had divorced years ago. Success had made him wealthy, but regret had made him wiser. For the first time since their marriage ended, she allowed herself to believe that people could change. And as the baby kicked gently inside her stomach, both of them realized that the future ahead might look very different from the one they had once imagined. Not because the past had been erased, but because they were finally willing to face it together.